ILJA LAURS, please.
So hello everyone, really great to see you all here, and it's actually an awesome event. And I was a little bit scared that with Wozniak being out there in the door that we collect any audience at all. But I'm really happy to see that almost all chairs, excluding the reserved ones, are actually occupied. So today I'm going to talk about mobile applications. Surprise, surprise. Before that, could I ask, please, how many of you actually are involved with mobile applications, producing mobile applications, developing or marketing mobile applications? So it's approximately half. Okay. So for the rest of you, I can tell you that mobile applications actually are a pretty cool thing. To start with, I really want to make one bold statement, is that mobile applications are becoming world's biggest medium. So behind me are some interesting data points. This is for US market, which is actually quite representative, and we believe that European, Asian, and other markets will be quite similar to this market in a couple of years. But here we compare web browsing versus mobile applications versus television, and minutes spent per day on average. So the highest engagement still, as you can see, is with television. So on average, 168 minutes per day in the US are spent watching television. What's interesting, web browsing remains pretty much the same, although everybody's talking about the growth of the web and internet and so on. For the last 3 years, it's actually stayed pretty much the same. What you can observe, though, which is pretty clear, that the green part of that is how fast mobile application engagement is growing. So 2 years ago, it bypassed web browsing. So when you think of that, it's really something which is very counterintuitive, because you say, hey, you know, this internet existed for 20 years. There are Facebooks, there are Googles, there is a ton of places on the web, and apparently there is a ton of companies working in the web. So how come those little mobile applications consume all this time? It's just not possible, but the data suggests otherwise. It's actually pretty reliable data. And what we observed, and what we observed already 2 years ago, is that mobile applications are becoming more popular and more used than even web browsing. So this year, as you can see behind me, last year, actually 2012, total engagement with mobile application, well, almost twice as large as web browsing altogether cumulatively. And if you just try to extrapolate this green line a couple years ahead, it's very easy to see that it bypasses the television as the first medium, and it becomes the largest medium on the planet. So the good news is, for those of you who are involved in mobile application, it seems that it's going to be a bigger market than television or web altogether. So my presentation today is pretty statistical, so I just thought, you know, for those of you who are involved in mobile applications, it might be just curious to learn which trends we're seeing and what markets are developing, what form factors are developing. So I just decided to share some a little bit more interesting insights with you. So no surprise here at all that when you look at the mobile web relative to mobile apps are winning massively. You know, this discussion, what's going to win, mobile web versus mobile apps, there's like a lot of opinions that, hey, native applications are really difficult to port, to test, and device fragmentation is high. So just as it happened on the web, there's a lot of opinions that ultimately it will be about mobile web browsing. To the extent that the most famous company today on the planet, Facebook, really made a bold statement 3 years ago that, hey, everything's going to be mobile web versus mobile apps. So they, as a company, made the biggest bet on mobile web. Now, the data suggests very differently. It suggests that mobile applications are used 4 times more than mobile web browsing. So we even went forward. So here you can see the actual engagement by category. And another interesting insight that games are becoming and have become the biggest part of mobile application ecosystem. I will share a little bit interesting data. Apparently, well, working with developers, working with all the world's largest applications, we can really see what's going on behind the curtains, which business models are strongest and which categories are really making the biggest money. So here you can see that games actually is the largest part of the mobile application ecosystem, but I can, on top of it, add that they are earning by far more than any other business model. Just if you're curious, you know, we identified 3 strongest business models on the mobile applications, and games are the largest one. So most of users, most of companies, most of money is made still in this mobile gaming sector relative to others. Just of curiosity, if you're curious, I can say that the second largest is dating, mobile dating. And the third largest, is actually a real surprise, is mobile security. So companies like AVG, like Lookout, like McAfee and others, really who work in this mobile security segment, although there are actually not that many real threats for mobile security, but applications are doing great. So consumers are willing to pay quite big money for this segment, this category. So we can see what else is popular. Entertainment comes soon after Facebook. So Facebook is almost a quarter of all mobile application usage. Again, surprise, surprise. Utility apps is 8%, social networking, news, productivity, and other. So this is the split as we see it today. Very interesting insight is although a number of mobile applications is launching exponentially, so we were talking about just 100,000 apps just a couple years ago to 1 million apps today to probably 10 million apps in the next 3 to 5 years, but the usage of applications is really remaining pretty much the same. So if user was using or launching approximately 7 applications per day on iOS or Android platform 3 years ago, so more or less the same number of applications he launches per day today. So basically what that tells, with this ecosystem going really super wide, growing 100 times, the actual usage of applications remain pretty much the same. So basically, based on that, what we do predict is that, say, there will be still a pretty heavy distribution of revenue and of usage of applications. So a couple of world's hit, like Angry Birds or Clash of Clans or some other similar titles, like the Sunny Drops, which is developed in Lithuanian and really is an awesome game, consuming a very small part of, say, of all ecosystem. And the long tail is really not making too much money. So that unfortunately remains the case. But the good news, if you happen to make it in this top 10, top 100 list, then the earnings are really outstanding. Say, for those of you who haven't been updated on the, say, most recent mobile success, most popular today game, Clash of Clans, we are approaching $2 million a day in revenue for just iOS. So $600 million a year for mobile application only on iOS platform, which is something completely outstanding. It's more than, say, any decent Hollywood movie is making for a lifetime. There is a very interesting distribution on which devices are used, how much on which platform. So we made a little research, whether it's tablets or whether it's small phones or large phones actually being used on different platforms. And there are a couple of interesting insights. So if you look at the iOS, tablets, specifically iPads, are growing really fast and today make a quarter of all usage. And I will show slightly later that specifically for games, specifically iOS tablets are becoming the biggest market. And that is still not the case with other platforms. So as you see on Android, tablets actually make a pretty small, just 14% part of the whole Android ecosystem. And the majority of Android usage still happens on phones. In other words, if you are developing an application for an iOS, you cannot ignore tablets, specifically iPads, especially if it's a game. Now, if you're developing for Android, pretty much the strategy today is to primarily focus on phones. BlackBerry Windows phones are only binary. So in BlackBerry, apparently, you don't have any tablets, and this BlackBerry tablet is really a joke. It's just not being used at all. And Windows Phone is primarily about the phone today. So pretty much if you're developing for those platforms, you can simply ignore tablets for now. Another interesting distribution is specifically by category. So we just made a little research, how much time consumer spends on which type of application, which type of device. So again, behind me you see the distribution. And interesting insight here is, again, pretty simple, is mobile games are really growing on tablets. And again, just to give you some interesting insights, if you look at the closer of the company, Clash of Clans, Supercell, so it's a very innovative, very interesting approach. This is the first ever gaming company that put mobile tablet, specifically iPad, as the first device. So this company has been focusing on specifically iPad and considers iPhones, small phone factor as a secondary market for them. And first time ever, a tablet-focused company really made it to the very top and became, the greatest success of all times in mobile gaming. So definitely we observe that games for tablets are growing really fast. Now, furthermore, apparently, well, I will talk a little bit more now about games because, again, as I mentioned, this is the largest app category. Most of the revenue, most of the money is made there. So what is not in the presentation, but I really want to highlight about this specific segment is that the business model behind games is changing massively. So if 3 years ago, this paid model, where you pay $1 or $2 or $3 for a mobile game, was really dominant, and most of the revenue were made with that specific model. Today, it's changing dramatically. So in-app purchases seems to be working much better for both the gamers and the game developers. Just to give you some sense of how powerful in-app purchase can be, I will mention you some relative numbers. One metric that we measure some mobile applications in terms of the strength of their business model is what we call RPM, or revenue per millennium, or revenue per 1,000 users. So on average, if you look at the paid casual segment, like Cut the Rope, Angry Birds, and those kind of games, who are paid first, the RPM would be between $10, $11, $15, so in that range. Now, if you look into in-app purchase, then examples would be anything from Hill Climb to Clash of Clans to social games, Sing, and so on. Now, RPMs are reaching $100 on average, and $800 in the best cases. So you can clearly see like $10, $15 pay first, $100 average with in-app purchases, and all the way to $800 on the high end, like really well-designed social games and network games and so on. Now, moreover, apparently, so this becomes a closing and self-fulfilling prophecy and closing loop, because basically what happens is your ability to drive high RPMs within your game apparently defines a pretty strong ability to buy marketing across all the channels that are available. So if you're a lucky one to really have designed the game with a really strong monetization, it allows you to actually buy a lot of positive word traffic from different sources like AdMob or other networks, including our service Getcher Gold, Getcher Distribution. So basically what we see is that if before game developer focus was really basically how do I make the best game, how do I make it, say, a paid application, how much I charge so I can get to the top of charts. So the focus really is on quality, on PR, on marketing, on distribution. Right now, the focus has completely switched to in-game monetization. Basically, if you solve the in-game monetization, what happens is, A, you start growing organically in top grossing charts, which today on both Android and iOS are becoming the most important charts, top grossing, as opposed to top 3 or top paid. B, if you really can solve monetization, then basically what happens is you can start affording buying users across different marketing channels. So again, just to mention the example of Supercell, with the success of Clash of Clans, today the game is making, as I mentioned, close to $2 million a day, but they are spending on advertising close to $1.5 million a day. So as you see, the success today is pretty much a function of marketing, as opposed to organic discovery, word of mouth, or anything else. So pretty much you have to build and buy your audience. Apparently your ability to buy the audience pretty much depends on how much you can afford to pay for the audience. And how much you can afford to pay for the audience pretty much depends on how strong your business model is, and that's basically a derivative of how well you have designed the game, how sticky it is, how users engage with that, and what pricing points you have, and so on. So basically, carefully designing monetization engine is becoming the #1 priority in mobile apps in general and mobile games in specifics, because that really allows you to to move up the charts and to generate the biggest revenue turnovers. My last slide is really about markets, because pretty often we see developers guessing, which are the most appropriate markets, how we should localize the application. Is it worth translating applications to German, French, or some other languages? So you can clearly see behind me is a chart about penetration of smartphones on the planet, and there's clearly two leaders by far. That's the US and China. And if you look at the upper right corner, you will see the dynamics, smartphone growth in both markets. Red line is apparently China, and it's very clearly see that it's growing exponentially. So give it a couple more years, and number of smartphone users, mostly Android users, but quite a lot of iPhone users as well, will be specifically in China. And again, a couple of comments here is it is worth mentioning that although those two markets are the largest ones, they do require a very fundamentally different approach. Say, even if you look if you look at the distribution opportunities across two platforms, say if you're working in the US, apparently iTunes and Google Play and all, say, traditional marketing channels are available to you. And Google Play is just not available at all in China. Content is very different in China. Unlike some other countries, we are not consuming English content at all. So basically what happens is, although the market is very big, you do have to develop a very, very, very different strategy to hit the Chinese market. But it's really worth it. So for those who have really done it and who have really found a successful strategy into those markets, we can clearly say that it just pays off massively, because just number of users in China is just amazing. And again, just to give you some interesting data points, if you look at the, say, one of the biggest success stories in mobile, Rovio, with Angry Birds, right now, one of your biggest focus is specifically China, because apparently number of users, number of phones, number of smartphones is very, very, very big in that country. So these are pretty much, say, the most visible trends, and I hope they help you more or less develop an opinion of how mobile application market is developing, you know, what are the form factors, what are platforms, what the markets are specifically important. And I believe the organizers have about 10 more minutes for questions, so I'm more than happy to answer. You can ask both in Lithuanian or English, whatever you like. Sure.
Questions here?
My question is about your first slide. In the first slide, you shows that mobile phones take more attraction every day, yeah? But attraction for web browsing and for television is the same. And my question is, when mobile applications, or maybe will they take attraction from the web browsing and from television, or just it takes the empty market?
Yeah, well, basically, you're asking where is cannibalization of mobile engagement relative to other channels. So, yes, you're absolutely right that web browsing seems to be flat, but what we are observing is that largest companies like Amazon's, eBay's, Facebook's, and the likes are now, this year, 2013, have only now started noticing that web browsing goes down. So this is not visible on these slides because we are up to 2012, but you are very right. It would be very natural, you know, does it really cannibalize this time or not? Apparently the answer is yes, although it's not really clear from this slide. And we do expect that this trend will be extremely visible, extremely strong, and there are actually some opinions that traditional web browsing with a desktop will eventually become 10% only of what it is now in the next 5 years. So you're absolutely right. Web browsing will be down. Now, television is very different to say. Apparently, we're still expecting the impact of Apple TV, Google TV, and those platforms that are yet to come. Apparently, there's some blend between, say, web browsing and television with the rise of Google TV and similar platforms. Netflix is coming onto the TV and so on. So probably, again, my first thought would be that television probably is going to remain the same, although it's going to be a different kind of television. But it will be probably a very safe bet to say that web browsing, as we know it now, on Windows platform with traditional browsers on the desktop will massively decrease, massively. Maybe to 10% of what it is now in the next 5 years. So, here.
Hi. I have 2 questions. I don't know, can I ask 2 or 1 question? I don't know.
Absolutely fine with 2.
Okay, the first question is, who is the best, what is the name of the company who is the best on mobile apps, like creation?
Okay.
Worldwide, I think.
Well, again, I have a strong respect for games, mobile games, and I think Supercell, again, surprise, surprise, in Finland, is probably the hottest company on the planet right now.
What's the name?
Supercell.
Supercell.
So it's very impressive growth, again, very impressive numbers. What's extremely impressive about Supercell company is it seems that they have really figured out what really works, Because one game you can consider a lucky success, hit or so on, but if you have produced 2 games and both reach top 10 in ranking and grossing and so on, so apparently it is a function of what we do somehow. So we know some kind of secret sauce. So that probably would be the hardest company on the planet today.
Okay, the last question is, you're working hard. I think
of course I am.
You're trying working hard, or you're working 24 or 54 hours per day. So how, after work, what's happening after work? How you're relaxing, how you put everything from your mind outside? What is you riding bike, or you flying sky, or you? Thank you.
Right. Well, I'm a little bit afraid that this question probably is outside of scope of this crowd. Yeah, I have a lot of hobbies, a lot of activities, including photography, sports, and so on. So apparently there is life after work.
One there.
You show data how people are using mobile technologies for just engaging with them, but do you have any information how people use mobile not for gaming but for example blogging and other personal things when people are just expressing themselves, not by creating the apps but just writing blogs, for example?
Right, so probably you're asking specifically about offering on mobile, right? Like producing content, producing mobile pages, producing mobile blogs with your mobile phones, mobile devices. So a couple of comments. One is, as you can see behind me, Facebook itself is now a quarter of all mobile application usage. So apparently what Facebook is noticing is that if before you uploaded photos and made comments and just shared stories and so on, primarily on the desktop, it is massively switching to mobile now, so it would be safe to assume that Facebook will very soon become a mobile-first company. Means majority of content, majority of blogs, photos, and everything else will be produced on mobile phone, uploaded from mobile phone. Now, if you talk a little bit, move up the stack and talk about a little bit more professional packages, like how to create a little bit more professional web pages and blogs and so on, if there is a very different approach to this in developed markets, talking about Europe and United States and so on, and developing markets like India, Vietnam, Indonesia, China, and so on. So to my surprise, actually had a chance to look a little bit more at some mobile web offering tools on mobile, for mobile, in those territories. It seems that producing content for mobile using touch phones is becoming extremely popular, say, in the developing world. And probably explanation is very simple. Very often, they simply don't have desktops or laptops. So very often, mobile phone is like the only device that you have. And some numbers that I already heard is that in countries like India or Indonesia, for every 1 desktop or laptop, you will find 10 mobile phones. So as you can see, the ratio is like really, really massively in favor for mobile phones. So then if you think of that, evaluate it, then there's no surprise that people actually use mobile phones to produce, as you say, blogging and even build like a full-scale mobile sites using just mobile phones, no computers. But having a look in that segment, like mobile web app offering sector in the developed world, I cannot see that same trend being repeated there. Because it seems that in those developed markets, apparently people do have access to tablets and desktops and much more convenient tools to create mobile applications or mobile webs or desktop sites. So it's pretty much different. But yes, you're totally right. There is a rise of using mobile phones as development tool in those countries.
And another question is maybe a little bit out of the scope of this stage is while doing business and developing great apps, you have to keep a balance between your job and work and your family things. So how is your story, how you managed to make that balance between your family things, I don't know, some women, so you have a wife, I don't know, in fact, and your work, so.
Yes, there is life after work, if you mean that. But again, you're totally right, so I will be very short in answering. What I will say is that there is, luckily, being effective today is really possible thanks to airlines and internet and some other time and money management tools. So I would say the efficiency of your work today can be greater than say, any time before that. So if you really, really improve your skills at managing time and managing your projects and so on, apparently you can create a lot of time for both sports and family and some other activities. So I don't know, it really answers your question.
I'm gonna come back from family life to startups. Okay, so my question is quite simple. There is a targeting audience when you test your app and you sell your app, as you mentioned, but for startups, I do believe it's not very much of an interesting thing, that because they don't have money, unless they get investment. But for actually for beta testing or for just early releases, maybe there is some market like India market or compared to American market, which I know generates more feedback, gives you space for mistakes and so on. Because there are, I do believe there is some difference for the quality of the apps. So I mean, shortly question would be, which market is best for early releases and testing your app?
Right. So the question is basically, what is the best market to release your applications into if you're only looking to test the application itself?
Yes.
Right. So again, my current vision is pretty simple. As I mentioned, one change has happened in mobile applications, specifically business model, is that paid model is massively being replaced by in-app model. And therefore, what happens is no longer you really need to develop sexy screens or descriptions or anything what you used before for paid applications. What becomes very important is how to design monetization within the game. So really, there's a lot of analytics. So you really have to look what's happening at every screen, consumers coming to your app. Like you have to do a lot of A/B testing. And basically, the good news is you only need like a couple of $100 to draw like a couple hundred of users into your application. It's already enough that you can actually start playing with different approaches. You can say, hey, this pay button is here versus there. Let's do A/B test. Let's run like 10 users on this, 10 users on that, compare result, pick best one, and then optimize the next step and so on. So there's a lot of iteration now. And one striking fact that I actually learned from one successful gaming company in that segment is that they say, hey, this importance of understanding and measuring exactly what's happening within each game is so important that already we have as many analysts as we do have coders. So for every 10 engineers who develop the game, there's 10 analysts who do nothing else but just dig into this big data and try to really analyze and see what's going on, change, design, improve again. The good news is the whole process doesn't really require too much money or marketing, because again, based on just 1,000 gamers, you can make like a pretty interesting optimizations. And then again, the other good news is if you have solved the unit economics, like you have really achieved those like 4, 6, 800 RPM numbers, then you don't need external money for marketing, because all marketing will be positive to you. Like you pay $1 for a user who brings you $1.50. So again, the good news, no longer you really need big marketing spend or big testing or anything else. In terms of specifically a question like the markets, apparently I would only test in the United States unless you speak Chinese, understand Chinese, which maybe not the case. But again, behavior, specifically paying behavior, paying patterns for US users are extremely different from some other users like Indian. So because the focus is so much on developing best possible in-app monetization, apparently you don't want cheap Indian users, cheap in a sense, not themselves, but cheap in a sense that they cannot spend much on game, as much as you can do in the US. So the approach would be focus on the US, really develop this in-game monetization as best as you can, hope that you can achieve a point at which marketing becomes profitable to you, and from that moment just scale globally. So that's the current approach. There's exactly 1 minute left, so probably just one last quick question, please.
Yeah, Ilya, hello. Vidas from Klaipėda. Thank you so much for the presentation. A quick question. As somebody that's done the impressive jump from the local scene into the international market, now what would you name as the strong features of Lithuanian developers versus to something that you need to outsource immediately once you are, let's say, in the international market? What do you need to hire, and what are the things that you need to take care of working internationally?
Right. So I always say that Lithuania current coders is a hacker generation because we all had to reinstall Windows ourselves. So really it is the case. So if you really look at the average, say, technical skill set of any average I don't know, guy or girl between 15 and 35, whatever, in Lithuania, on average, the technical savviness will be much higher than even in countries like the United States. This is an awesome basement because two things happen. One is really it gives you a lot of creative ideas. For example, only one who has played all the games on the planet, apparently downloading them maybe for free, maybe for symbolic part, only that person can design the next generation game. And only the one who has been playing with AutoCADs and Visual Studios and so on can produce really high quality code and ideas. So the basement is really great. Now, where I see the lack of knowledge is specifically how we translate those ideas into startups, into something which has a global promise. So say lack of sometimes of understanding what VCs are, what funding is, what PR, what marketing is really stops us from launching 10 and ever Skypes or similar projects. So this is why I dedicate so much time for trying to share that knowledge, but I really encourage you to really just get in touch with your peers in Silicon Valley, in Britain, in Finland, after all, because there's a lot of knowledge which is very simple, not rocket science, like can be easily understood, and which makes a massive difference for a startup and for business opportunities. So again, unfortunately, there's a ton of things happening on this floor. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.